This is the magicwordpodcast.com.
Hello, this is Scott Wells for the... Oh, excuse me. Let me take off this mask. Take off that mask. Hello, this is Scott Wells for the magicwordpodcast.com. This week's episode is quite different as we're going to be talking about the novel coronavirus or COVID-19 or whatever you want to term it. It's a pandemic, and it has affected our industry in so many ways, and we're going to discuss that with several people, just kind of cross-section of our magic community to kind of get their take on what has happened to them, as I'm sure it has happened to you, and some suggestions on what to do during this time while we have a little downtime. I say a little, but let's hope it's going to be a little. Uncertain how long this is going to last. Well, this week's episode is brought to you again by our sponsor, themagicbookshop.com. Eric Citron is the owner and proprietor of that, and during this past couple of weeks, he has had a contest that's been going that has been for a copy of Daryl's Ambitious Card Omnibus. Apparently, that is an in-demand book, and he had quite a few people who had signed up for that, but the winner has been drawn, and let me announce that congratulations goes to Michael Bockert, or Bockert, B-O-C-H-E-R-T, Bockert, I believe. So, Michael, congratulations, and I know that he has contests running all the time for different books and opportunities, so if you'll go to themagicbookshop.com, there you'll see a link where you can enter a contest, and of course that if you buy any books there, that he will always give you a free book with every purchase. And if you are, since you're a listener of the Magic Word, if you will put in the promo code Magic Word, that's all one word with no spaces or hyphens or anything, in the promo code as you check out, then you'll get a 15% discount then as well. As if that's not enough, what he's offered then right now is we have a contest going on the magicwordpodcast.com. If you go to our website, you'll see a form that you can fill out to win $100 worth of magic books. Oh! That's right. $100 worth of magic books. And all you have to do is just to sign up, and then we will announce the winner in a couple of weeks, give people a chance to listen to this podcast and go to the website and sign in. And with that, the books will be dealer's choice. That is, that Eric, as the dealer, will decide which books are going to be put into that package. And so it's kind of a mystery box, if you will. So you won't know what books you're going to be receiving, but it'll be $100 worth of books, and you're not going to be out anything at all. All you have to do is put in your email address, and that way that you'll get in the contest. So again, thank you, Eric. Thank you to themagicbookshop.com. Go check them out if you're looking for new and used books, old books, collector books, some that are signed, out of print, rare, hard to find. That's the place to go. So again, thank you, Eric. Now on to this week's episode. Wow. Well, as the Grateful Dead said back in 1977, what a long, strange trip it's been. Well, we really can't say that yet because we're right now, I don't know where we are on that voyage or that journey, but it is quite a trip, huh? We seem to be at the beginning of this, so we don't know if we're in the middle, towards the end, or whatever, but we're all in it together right now. And you're hearing a lot of different news reports and things, obviously, in the social media, as well as news reports. Different updates are coming out daily, and everybody's wondering, what the heck is this, and what should we be doing? Is there anything we can do? Well, there's not much you can do unless, I guess, you work in the medical field, particularly directly trying to help with this. We are given a lot of other suggestions as to what we should be doing or shouldn't be doing. Most of us are staying home, and that's what this episode is going to be talking about, and that is we're going to visit with a variety of different magicians who are, obviously, we're all hunkered down right now, and there have been a lot of cancellations, postponements of our shows, and as a result, that there's no income. I understand there are like 5.8 million tax-paying citizens in the United States who rely upon gig income. That is, that their sole income has to do with performances and shows and whatever they like that. And we are certainly in the middle of that type of group. And so that's what this is about. Now, it would be easy, it would not be easy for me to go around and try to conduct conversations with everybody because everyone is affected. So this week we have a sampling of different people who are impacted within our profession, and I thought it might be kind of interesting so this way that you know we're all in it together. Sometimes you look around, you're wondering, man, this is just me. I guess that's what they say about the difference between a depression and a recession is that a recession is when you're out of work and a depression is when I'm out of work. Well, right now it probably seems like a depression because you and I and all of us are out of work for some undetermined period of time. But just so that you know that there are other people out there who are feeling the same way, I thought it might be helpful to hear some of the conversations with these people and perhaps also what they're going to be doing and what they suggest during this downtime. But before we really go into that, as I said, there have been a lot of news reports as to what this is and what it's all about. I happen to have a friend who is involved with this, actually with all kinds of viruses. It's a lady who actually works privately in the private sector, advising companies as to the threat assessment for different kinds of diseases. So if some company is going to be sending employees to another country, that she would say that it's a certain level of threat, on green, yellow, or red, and also what kinds of immunizations that you need to have to go into this country or into that city or wherever. Nevertheless, that she's been very involved with this, but she, because of contractual obligations, is unable really she doesn't want to come on the podcast and actually say anything, nor does she want her company to be recognized. But she did send me something to read, which I thought would be of interest, and some of this some of you don't know. So if you'll indulge me for a little bit here, that I'll give you some information, as I had received this from her last week. Now, here it is on March the 19th, and this would have been about a week to 10 days old. I believe it was around the 8th or 9th, I think, of March when this was sent, and since then, there have been other updates. Anyhow, she was saying, here is what I think you should know and probably already know. The virus is thought to spread mainly from person to person, that is, between people who are in close contact with each other, that's within 6 feet, and through respiratory droplets produced when an infected person coughs or sneezes. And the droplets can land on the mouths or noses of people who are nearby or possibly be inhaled into the lungs. That's from the CDC. Other adults and people who have severe underlying chronic medical conditions like heart or lung disease or diabetes seem to be at higher risk for developing more serious complications from the COVID-19 illness. This is the highest fatality group. But what I think is relevant for you to avoid potential exposure is the following. First of all, follow local health authority guidelines. Now, in each of your states and perhaps countries and provinces and wherever you live, each would have some sort of a .gov or .us in our case, or whatever. With a little Google search, you can find that, which is updated daily with all the state departments. And one in the United States would be go to this www.cdc, that's Center for Disease Control, cdc.gov/public health gateway/health directories/health departments.html. But if you just go to cdc.gov, I think that you can find that. Social distancing measures include event cancellations. Some authorities advise events of greater than 500 people be canceled, others less and others more. The aim is to avoid transmission among large numbers of people in confined spaces. Avoiding close contact. This should include avoiding handshakes and distancing with volunteers, at least 6 feet. Children often display mild symptoms, so it's hard to know if they are sick, but they can transmit the virus to older, more vulnerable individuals. Avoid close contact with people who are sick or who have traveled to an area with widespread community transmission. Avoid sharing objects with others. This could mean the tools of your trade. In our case, it would be pick a card. Someone touching a card and then you taking it back, or particularly a card in the mouth or something like that, I guess, and then also transmitting it to others. If you're doing a card trick and then have the same deck of cards that you're having other people select cards, you're transmitting germs from one person to another via the cards and through sponge balls or sponge rabbits and different things like that. Practice good hygiene measures, cleaning and disinfecting of frequently used objects and shared objects. Again, this could be the tools of your trade. Recognize and make adjustments to your behavior/schedule if you are sick or if you have been in contact with someone who is sick. Avoid travel, particularly if you are sick. In general, to protect yourself, number one, clean your hands often. You hear that all the time and everywhere we go. Wash your hands often with soap and water for at least 20 seconds, especially after you have been in a public space or after blowing your nose, coughing, or sneezing. I think someone had once told me that an easy way of doing and remembering what 20 seconds is to sing the happy birthday song. So as you're washing your hands, just say, happy birthday to me, happy birthday to... Sing that I think that takes about 20 seconds if you sing it slow enough, I believe. Maybe 3 times. I don't know. Also, you should be using soap and water. If they're not readily available, then use a hand sanitizer that contains at least 60% alcohol. Cover all surfaces of your hands and rub them together until they feel dry. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth with unwashed hands. Avoid close contact. That means to avoid close contact with people who are sick. And put distance between yourself and other people if COVID-19 is spreading in your community. This is especially important for people who are at higher risk of getting sick. Okay, so to protect others, cover coughs and sneezes. Cover your mouth and nose with a tissue when you cough or sneeze, or you can use the inside of your elbow. Throw used tissues into the trash. Immediately wash your hands with soap and water for at least 20 seconds. If soap and water are not readily available, again, clean your hands with a sanitizer that contains at least 60% alcohol. Stay home if you are sick. Wear a face mask if you are sick before seeking medical attention. If you can't wear a face mask, then cover coughs and sneezes. Call the health facility ahead to notify them of a possible case. Do not wear a face mask if you are not sick unless you are caring for someone who is sick. And clean and disinfect frequently touched surfaces daily. This includes tablets, doorknobs, light switches, countertops, handles, desks, phones, keyboards, toilet faucets, and sinks, and tools of your trade. If surfaces are dirty, clean them. Use detergent or soap and water for disinfection. And do not travel if you're sick. Note that some locations have implemented screening and travelers may face quarantine and testing. So that's just a quick overview of where we stand, or at least stood last week, and much of that, of course, I think is still good advice of what we should be adhering to then right now. So again, there are a lot of people out there who I could have talked with. Time has been short, and I know that this has been in all the news, and you're probably staying home and wondering what to do. Well, there's good advice that's going to be coming from some of my guests, all of my guests here actually today, and kind of getting to hear what they have to say. So I think the first one that I spoke with might be of interest because we've recently seen some cruise ship entertainers. I should say there's some cruise ships that have been docked outside of their ports and were not able to come in to land. And then once they were, it took a few days to try to get everybody through the screening process, but then also that they have been canceling some of these ships going out. So one of the first people that I talked with was Fred and Bobby Becker up in Dallas, Texas. Following that, I know that Jessica Jane Peterson is another cruise ship entertainer, and that she has something very interesting to say about what has affected her. So let's hear from Fred and Bobby Becker here on The Magic Word. I thought it'd be interesting to get a perspective from someone on this coronavirus, from someone or a couple actually of people who actually work on cruise ships, because there is obviously a real concern about this where people congregate, and then when you're out to sea and you're among a lot of people and unable to get to shore. And recently there have been some cruise ships that have been basically abandoned offshore, like in Japan and off the shore of San Francisco and elsewhere. Anyhow, right now I've got with me Fred and Bobby Becker. Boy, I don't know why I'm tongue-tied there. And Bobby. Hey, Fred.
We do that.
Yeah.
We tongue-tie people.
Who have been working on the Regent and the Oceana lines.
Among many others, but
sure.
We sort of niche ourselves into the luxury brand because it's a fun lifestyle to be an entertainer there.
I know, I work overseas, and
okay,
I understand what you mean.
Yes. Yeah.
They do treat you nice.
It's a good life. Yes, and now is kind of a difficult time for the industry. I got to say, Scott, I've wanted to do a number of these podcasts with you, but I was expecting a lot more fun and martinis involved.
There will be the next time.
Okay.
I promise that.
Instead of talking about diseases and lost work. Yeah.
That's right. Speaking of lost work, there are so many different avenues and things I'd like to discuss about that. Not just lost work, but also interaction of passengers, and we'll be talking with other people then about working close up and everything, but you're mainly working on stage and then interacting with people on a daily basis and everything. Now, the coronavirus really hasn't just popped up until just here we are on March the 12th, and this came up really pretty quickly, just over the last month. Now, when was the last time you were actually on board?
It was about 2 weeks ago, I think it was.
You just got off?
You came home March 2nd.
Right.
March 2nd?
Yeah.
Okay, from where were you? Alaska, were you this time?
It was Caribbean.
Okay.
Yeah. And previous to that, we were down in French Polynesia and New Zealand.
Mm-hmm.
And I was not with Fred on the last cruise that he did. So I was actually in Oklahoma where my father was recovering from surgery.
Now, were people on board talking about this? I mean, do you get the news on board? Or typically when people go on vacation, I know on cruises, like that's the last thing you want to know about her is news. You mean you just want to separate yourself. But what's going on?
It wasn't really news when we were there yet,
Well,
as far as cruises were concerned completely, other than...
Well,
sort of.
when we were down in French Polynesia, we were on our way to some of the Samoan islands, and they turned us away. They said no cruise ships whatsoever, so we didn't go there. And then when we arrived in Fiji, we had to, we all had to line up and have our temperatures taken before they would let people off the ship.
Off the ship.
Yes.
They also did a health screening for those of us who joined in French Polynesia, because it was a part of the World Cruise, so they had begun. Some of the passengers had begun in Miami. Some they'd picked up in San Francisco. So if you had joined in French Polynesia, they made you come down and do a quote-unquote health screening where they sort of looked at your throat, listened to your lungs.
But there was really no attrition as far as passengers. You didn't see any difference at that point.
And they kind of had people sort of standing guard. They kind of had people standing guard as you entered the dining facilities, making sure you washed your hands right there in front of them. But that was really the only thing we noticed.
Right. They were being quite proactive about cleanliness. And but I agree with you, Scott. There was not really, we weren't sailing half full or anything like that.
We weren't even really talking too much about it at dinner.
That wasn't a thing.
It wasn't really a topic
ago,
of conversation the way it is now.
Sure.
Right. So at this moment, it's a pretty fluid situation. There have been some rather drastic news elements in our industry. So
there's been some draconian measures actually taken as we're speaking today about closures in the NBA and the Final Four and all these kinds of activities,
right.
sports-wise, have been shut down. And of course, the market's been reacting that way as well. But in particular, where that you are essentially enclosed in like a submarine. I mean, you're just on one place where people are kind of interacting with the same people every day for a period of time. I would think, in particularly, that cruise lines have always appealed to the senior citizen or retired people who have some expendable income, and that's not necessarily the main market, but that is a large demographic, certainly, the cruise business, and those are the ones of us who are the ones most affected by this. So I think
exactly. I think some of the, it's hard to tell. There's a lot of unknown, and I think there's very fluid situations, and it's the fear of the unknown. So I suspect, and I don't know, I'm not a scientist, that some of this has been a panicked reaction compared to other sort of lethal things that exist in our world. But it's also prudent not to put a bunch of high-risk people into an environment that's enclosed that could be spread around. And obviously people could... there could be fatalities because of that situation. So a number of cruise lines at this point have canceled cruises altogether, or they're limiting the people that are coming on board and how much interaction they will have. As magicians, we're audience participation performers, so I've been worried about this a long time. I've been waiting for the moment when they said, okay, you can do your act, but you can't use anybody from the audience.
You touched on exactly what my next question was going to be about. Let's say that you and Bobby were going to be going out this next week, and you're going to start to put things together. How would you change your act as far as getting people up on stage or touching them and having volunteers, or would it just strictly be music and no audience participation?
Right.
Honestly, it would hurt us. We would seek the advice of our cruise line, obviously, but we're very strong audience participation driven. If they handicap that part of our show, I would rather just not do our show. Frankly, I wouldn't be very worried. I would, we would wash our hands. We would make sure we were sanitary, and, we might make a joke of using hand sanitizer, like, here, before you come on stage, please sanitize, or something. But I think it would really cripple our show. So ultimately, the cruise lines would probably make that decision for us. They would say no audience participation, or they would just simply not hire acts they know are heavy on audience participation. We do have other things we can offer, such as lectures and workshops and stuff where you don't have to use audience participation, but I would say our show is very strongly,
Well, and it doesn't mean we can't retool it given a certain amount of time. I guess at this point, Scott, there's a couple takeaways from this situation. And it really depends on what the new normal will be once we ride through this.
Kind of like 9/11. We're living under a new normal ever since 2001, 9/11.
Yeah.
Right. So will there be a drastic change in society? Will they not want audience participation type entertainment? Is that going to be taboo? Or will we come out and say, sort of settle back into the way things are previous to this?
It's a bit scary to contemplate cruise ships. If you gut the heart of audience participation, in some ways you gut a cruise ship. They all cater to something different, but by and large, the mega ships are all about getting people involved.
You mean like with bingo and everything else where they're calling?
Yeah, with bingo, sexy legs contest,
Right.
water volleyball, anything where you have everybody together being involved. It's the
big
heart.
soup.
It's the heart of a good time. So I think it would really fundamentally change cruising forever, and I truly hope that they do not do that.
I would think they would get more comedians who are just standing there behind a microphone. People they're not interacting, they're not participating other than just listening, which they could do online, of course, with a comedian or on television or whatever, which is the great thing about magicians, I think, because that it is interactive and you do have somebody and you have that mystery right there as opposed to, comedy is fine. So I'd hate to think that it is going to go away from that and they'll say, don't touch people. One idea I was just thinking of for an example might be if you had your own little bottles of Purell and you had, the Becker's, magic, and you hand that as a souvenir. Say, hey, thanks for helping us. And, you kind of wash your hands before you come on or whatever and hand that out.
I've already been contemplating that. I think that's a brilliant idea.
It's delicate, though, because you don't know who has possibly been affected and who takes offense. You really have to. It's so right now.
Correct.
So we can't really evaluate what could happen. We have to hope. I think the cruise lines are reacting out of an abundance of caution.
Correct.
And what happened to Princess is extremely unfortunate that they were the first one that experienced this because they were in Asia and got quarantined. And then the second one, but is just based. It's just dumb luck based on their location and who was on their ships. But I would say, by and large, cruise ships are the leaders in protecting against things like this and trying to keep people healthy. I have always been far more worried of contracting something on an airplane than I have a cruise ship.
That's a good point. Because that's just recycled air.
Yeah, and
for hours at a time.
And you cannot get away. You're in close proximity to people, right? So they're coughing on you all over the place, and you're sitting here with your scarf up over your head, hoping none of the germs get in.
You're strapped in, Lucky. You can't get away from them.
There's nowhere to go. And honestly, they're disgusting. The last plane we were on, I was looking at Fred, and I was like, well, they're obviously not concerned about cleanliness. Look at the floor of this plane. Look at what looks like it's splattered all over the back of the seat. Cruise ships, I mean, they're having you wash your hands and sanitize incessantly for years
and
now.
Wiping down every surface.
They wipe down
constantly.
every single surface constantly. Yeah, I mean, they are very aware because of the norovirus and the seasonal flu and all of those kinds of things.
Sure.
They have procedures in place to protect passengers and long before coronavirus. And I think this has just been really bad luck and a bad situation, and they just can't risk it. They don't want to be responsible for anybody else dying.
Of course not.
Well, and the truth is, this is spilling over into most every other market.
Yeah.
The corporate
That's right.
market, they're canceling all kinds of conferences and meetings.
Well, that was what I was going to ask you then next. Between the times that you are off the ship, do you do other kinds of shows and corporate shows and whatever? And have you found over the last few weeks some postponements or cancellations or fewer calls?
Well, funny enough, we just got back from doing a senior community that had a big theater, and we did our 90-minute show in, and everything ran normal.
Great. Everybody was out to see the show, and
Yeah,
we had audience participation, and nobody
And that's
seemed...
just been within the last week.
Yep.
Yeah.
Nobody seemed panicked at all. I mean, it was...
And those were senior citizens.
Yeah, they're an active senior
Yeah.
community, and it was great. It was a really great show.
I just got a call this morning. I was to do a function out in Charleston, South Carolina, coming up in late March, and they just said we're going to postpone this until May. Not being canceled, and I'm thinking also that hopefully this will be something like a lot of other viruses that will burn out as the change in the season and it gets warmer. I mean, who knows? I mean, yeah, fingers crossed that we don't know what's going to be happening, and this may all be redundant. And as we look back on this, it's going to be like looking back on the Y2K. It's like we were all freaked out about it, and then once we got through it, it's like, oh, we're okay.
We hope so.
I think it's extremely...
so, yeah.
I think it's extremely scary for people because it's unknown. If you keep calm and look at the numbers, it doesn't seem that scary. If you are looking at the numbers on paper, I think the big thing is that they're like, we just came home from our job. That our job was March 6th, 7th, something like that, and we came home, the day after. And within the last few days, you said it's March 12th now. A lot of things have changed.
Oh boy, just even last night.
Yeah. So I think because things are developing rapidly, now we have more test kits. People are getting tested, so they're getting more accurate numbers. I think some of that is fueling a lot of this. And once we have sort of a vaccine and control and everybody calms back down, I fully expect everything to go back to normal. But you never know. It's like you said, it might be a new normal.
Well, yeah, I kind of wanted to address that. My thoughts on this. In the world of science and medicine, there aren't really cures for viruses whatsoever. So corona or COVID-19 will be with us in the future. Hopefully we'll get immunization.
Vaccinations.
But right now, the common flu is basically a descendant of the Spanish flu that came out in 1918. So over 100 years, we've been passing around the same flu on a seasonal basis.
And we do have vaccines, but the flu still kills 12,000 people in the U.S. every year.
It mutates. So we have to understand that this will be with us in some way.
Yes.
And so my takeaway from this particular instance of where we are in history is, as business people, we have to be prepared for these times, these black swan events. There are a lot of people in my business in the cruise industry that are getting canceled, and they're
furloughed. They're not getting any income right now.
Not getting any income. And I'm not getting any income. For the next 3 months, I have no
I understand 5.8 million people in the United States who pay taxes are gig employees, people who just get gigs.
Right.
Yeah.
And that was sort of the
That's
new
significant.
economy, right? That's where the things are coming from.
They kind of live gig to gig.
Right.
A lot of them aren't as, how do I want to say this? They need to be prepared. Like self-employed people, we have to be prepared. The age-old wisdom of having 6 months worth of income in a savings account somewhere to prepare is very sage advice, and I don't think that's ever hit home more than now.
Right. Right.
So it's a lesson for all of us giggers. You've got to have the money, because right now, because my husband is wise, we just bought a new house. We're still trying to sell an old house. This isn't the best time for those things to be going on. But we aren't as panicked as some people might be, because we have been preparing for this financially, just in case, because we know that anything can come.
Right.
So,
Well, thank you. I just wanted to get it kind of your perspective, from a cruise ship performer of what that it's been like and what you're kind of anticipating. And so what's the next step? I mean, at this point, you're just kind of waiting for...
I am...
Are you been talking with the ships here recently to find out what they're going to do? Okay.
Okay, so my advice, at least, is no matter what market you're in, is to stay in contact with your regular customers. Remember, this is a human event that we're all experiencing, and we should approach it with a certain amount of charity and love in our hearts towards people that are struggling, industries that are struggling, people that have to cancel that don't want to cancel but have to. I think we have to be understanding of that and supportive, because when we do come out of this, we want them to know that we were on their side, and therefore, as a community, we go forward. It's also a time where, Bobby and I travel so much for our business that there have been plenty of times where I'm like, oh, I'll get to that when I have time. I'll get to this when I have time. Well, now I have time.
Yeah.
So instead of focusing on the downside of this, I'm going to take the opportunity to do all those projects that I promised myself I would do.
Some repairs and the illusions and whatever else, and
Completely.
tweak your website. And
We'll take you downstairs here after this is over, Scott, and show you his new office that he's going to put together, and you'll see the state that it's in, and then you'll be glad that we have 2 months off.
So when I come back next time to actually do this longer chat,
yeah.
you'll
we
be
can do a
everything
video tour. Yeah. But right now, no, I would mug you at the door if you took pictures.
Yeah, it's an extreme disarray. Yeah. So we're trying to look at the bright side of things and see this as an opportunity for us to really unpack our new home and put it together and nest a little bit. In that way, when things
basically prepare to reemerge into the marketplace when it opens back up.
Good advice.
But also looking at it in a creative fashion. If it doesn't reopen the way we knew it before, how do we adapt and how do we make ourselves relevant to the new normal that is presented to us?
Right, whatever that happens to be.
Right.
Yeah.
Like you said, if they do decide to do away with audience participation or something, then, this gives Fred some time to be creative and possibly contemplate ways to change up the show.
Guess what? You're in the show a whole lot more now.
Do a lot more singing.
A lot more singing.
That's right. Well, great. No, I appreciate your thoughts on that, and wish you luck. And let me just let you plug. What's the name of the website, by the way, for your cruise ship information?
So this seems like an odd time to advertise it.
Yes,
but
it would be.
This may actually be the perfect time for anybody who's interested in the cruise market. Now's a good time to, if you have the free time, now's a good time to delve into this. So we have a online course, which is full of essays, videos, interactive things. Bobby and I sort of mentor people into the cruise industry, and that is at gigsonships.org, GIGS.
Don't try to spell without looking.
O-N ships.
O-N ships.
.org.
Ships.org.
Yep. Where you can actually take a free test drive of the site and the learning environment. I've put a lot of time and effort into it.
You did.
And it's beautiful.
That's why
I like to show it off.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Although I will say, fear not. The cruise industry is massive. I think they're going to make it through this. I am extremely proud to be a part of this industry because I do believe they are handling things so well. I think they're making decisions the best that they can. I think they are, it's an army out there. It's not just big corporate America, cruise lines. It's, it is an army of people, crew and staff and people every day that make this big machine function properly. And I think they're doing the very best they can to protect not only the citizens of whatever nation this ship might be flagged in, but also all of their crew members who come from all over the world. And they're making the best decisions that they can make. And a lot of people are going through hardships right now. And I know that some cruise lines are even paying salaries for the time period that their workers aren't going to be working. So they're doing a great job. I'm really, really proud of them. And I think the cruise industry will bounce back.
I think everything will eventually here bounce back then as well. It's just we're kind of in a lull right now and a serious valley more than a lull. So anyhow, thank you very much, Bobby, Fred. Appreciate you guys talking about this, and we'll get together another time, and happier times.
Yes.
About this end too, and over martini, as you say. I like
Absolutely.
that.
Yeah.
So
yes. I've heard. Yes. Fielding West said, "Beware of Scott and his martinis."
I would take that advice to heart. So the Magic Word Podcast has Fred and Bobby Becker. Scotty out. I said this is an ever-evolving situation, and I had read a posting on Jessica Jane's Facebook page in saying about how that at one point it looked like that she was still planning on going out to sea, and then something got canceled. Well, I thought it's best just to hear it from her, so I contacted her, and here's what Jessica Jane had to say about the upcoming cancellations of her cruise ship engagements. So right now I have with me a cruise ship magician who is someone I have spoken with before, and it's someone who's kind of funny because this was the one and only person actually that I had conducted a full-length conversation with while we were in the confines of a car. Usually it's in a room, but this was in a car in a parking lot, and when we were in Nashville. And so welcome JJ. Here she is, Jessica Jane Peterson. Hey, Jessica. Welcome back. Great, thank you. And golly, good to talk with you again. And I guess you're going to be having a little bit of time now to chat and do about whatever for a while here.
Oh, yeah. So, it's the creative period. It's
Yes, I guess it would be. And that's what I wanted to talk with you about because I know that cruise ships have certainly had their share of problems due to the coronavirus here right now, as far as some of the cruises not being able to come to land, or they've had to wait for a while people were quarantined, et cetera, et cetera. And so I want to talk with you, since that your main bread and butter really is the cruise industry. So what's up? Have you had some things postponed, canceled, or what's the status? I mean, as we're talking here, it is Saturday, March the 14th. So what's up?
Oh, dude. I mean, I know we are all in the same boat. We are banding together as entertainers. I had said earlier to somebody, I feel like we're all living by Charlie Chaplin's song, that smile though your heart is aching, smile though you feel it breaking. It's that kind of feeling. But I sail, I think last year I was sailing 172 days out of the year, and this year I'm scheduled for about the same. So I just got off the Norwegian Breakaway. I was on there for 3 weeks, and I was on another ship for I think it was 28 days, about a week prior to that. And I sail so much that I only have usually between 5 and 9 days between my contracts if they don't send me immediately to another ship. Mm-hmm. So the initial thing we got about a week ago was you have to be on land for 14 days between your contracts. And so that got rid of most of my contracts anyway. So every other one was canceled. And it stunk too, because I'm now at this phase in the cruise market where I'm finally repeating ships. Yeah. So all my lighting cues are saved. All my music cues are saved. I'm like, no, it's finally getting easier. Like, darn it.
So are they canceling you as an entertainer, or are they just canceling cruises and the ships are dry docked, or what?
Initially it was as an entertainer. And unfortunately, I was not within the 14-day period. So we pretty much all of us have lost our contracts without pay. So there's no compensation. Like we're booked out. They've only canceled the contracts as far as I know right now, because it's been so crazy. The agents have so many people to call. We're sort of finding out here and there. But so far it's all my contracts until May that are canceled. And I'm still waiting to get paid for one that I did on another cruise line. So I'm hoping that comes in, because money is good right now, and that is the last chance. But the only cruise line that hadn't canceled on me yet was Holland America, and I was set to leave on March 21st and sail to Hawaii, because quite honestly, I would not mind getting stuck in Hawaii if I had to choose a place. I've never been before. It'd be lovely. But I haven't actually heard from Holland America yet. I have no information, but I mean, all over the internet, they have shut down operations. So I'm assuming I'm canceled unless I'm doing a show for myself.
So they're notifying all of their passengers, but not the staff, basically.
Yeah, well, I think too, a lot of the agents are shut down like on Saturdays and Sundays. So I think they just have so many people to contact. I've tried to leave my agent alone because she is lovely, and I keep up to date on things, and I'm like, it is what it is. I'm trying to find the silver lining. It sucks. I mean, it sucks for all of us. I've lost pretty much I think maybe 2/3 of my income for the year was in this time, because it was my back to back fly on, fly off ships where I was getting as much as I could. So is gone. The corporate gigs are gone. The corporate gigs that I had booked 2 corporate gigs when I was on the ship 2 weeks ago, and they got put on hold. And I don't have the heart to do the deposit thing with them right now, because I know that no one is doing this by choice. It's out of necessity. So I'm just trying to do what I can and be creative and be optimistic and get my entertainer brain in sort of a learning curve where I'm like, I have this time, I have this downtime. What can I learn? What I'm looking back at videos of the shows and giving myself notes. Like I really want to work on things while I have this time off the ships.
So you've been recording your shows, which was good advice, I guess, to give anybody, is you should always record your show. And now is a good time to then go back and look at those.
Well, not just video. I also do audio. It was something that Matt King had talked about. I audio record the shows and just listen to it. And I almost learn more from that sometimes than the video. Because sometimes I think you get distracted watching it of what's going on. And if you really listen to yourself, there's so many notes that you can get.
That's true. I remember Gene Anderson saying many years ago about how that he would record his show just with cassette recorders way back when, and that his situation would be like after a show, it's like, I don't think that was a very good show, and then you listen to it and say, and you start to hear some of the things you were saying, but also the audience reaction. Say, well, I guess that wasn't too bad. And then you listen to it a second time, it's like, it was pretty good. And then finally, it's like, I think it was darn good, But also, you're listening to what you say, and you're starting to get some ideas from what you have said that you can use then in the future. And that's another good thing, is that a lot of times that there might be some real gold that is said by a volunteer. You think, I'm going to use that later, and then you forget about it completely. And so if you recorded it, then you're going to be able to pick up on that again.
Well, even in the way you say it, too. Like, I've had certain things I've said on stage where I said them in a different way, and I realized it hit. And then I went back through audio recordings and went, okay, this is why that hit so hard. I said it differently here than I did in any other show, and it worked. So I'm like, I need to remember to do that. Right.
Yeah. You had touched on something, just going back just a second, about deposits, and you said that you had some corporate shows that you had not requested a deposit, and so that really is not something that you have to worry about as far as going back and asking for a deposit or anything. I assume that you don't have any deposits or anything, of course, when you're working on the cruise ships.
No. And I was booked solid with the ships. Like I said, I honestly didn't have any time for the corporate dates between all the ship contracts right now. So I was accepting them afterward in May and June and July. And those are all on hold. They've contacted me, but again, not knowing the time frame of this. And I think just having a good attitude with the client and being understanding. I have a feeling that when all this resolves itself, which I think hopefully will be soon, I've got my fingers crossed, that clients will remember that and go, you know what, they were really good to us. We're going to go right back to them as soon as we can have an event. And we've had that with the events so far that have canceled, So they're like, as soon as we have something, as soon as we're doing this event for our group, or as soon as we're doing this show, of course we'll contact you, because you've been so easy to work with.
Right. When I had read something from you, I guess about a week ago, in which that's kind of like fingers crossed that nothing's canceled yet. Now, as we're speaking today, obviously it has been. But at the time, what kind of changes, if any, were you going to do to your show in anticipation of this kind of making sure you don't touch people kind of thing?
So first of all, I want to say real quick on here, I honestly felt safer on the ships than I do on land in
really?
LA.
That's interesting. Yeah.
They are so clean right now, and people are so on it. I mean, it's spotless. I would have gladly stayed on that ship till this is over and would not have worried one bit. Both Holland America and Norwegian, the 2 lines that I've been working on for the last year and a half, have been really, really good with this stuff. And I sanitize my hands throughout the show. That's something I always noticed Copperfield doing. Like he'd make the car appear, and then as he steps into the car, you see him get the hand sanitizer and go for it, And I realized how important that was. So I have little moments in the show where I will wipe off my hands secretly, backstage or something in little breaks. And I stopped doing meet and greets on the ship. I would see people around, and I would do an elbow bump or something. So I wasn't doing those, and I was on a ship. It was the Norwegian Sun not too long ago, and I decided for myself just to see if I could do it. You've been with me on stage. You know how touchy-feely I am, and I like to interact with volunteers.
Right.
I use about 10 people in a 45-minute show on the ships. I have 2 different 45-minute shows that I do. It's about the same amount of volunteers in each. And I was thinking, how do I cut out all touching, all passing of objects? Like, how do I make them feel safe with this? So I went through each routine one by one, and if I couldn't find a different way to get the information I needed from them, or say something like tossed out deck, went out of the show, but invisible deck went in to replace it for a little while, because obviously there's no touching in that, so I would take each routine out and move it a little bit and arrange it so that I could replace other things. And it's worked pretty well. I mean, I got through the full 45, and there was no change to the connection to the audience. And I went back and watched it and thought, I was afraid it was going to look like I was trying to be distant from everyone, and it did not come off that way.
Oh, that's
so
good.
It was a really good exercise. And then all this came about because that was in the beginning of February, maybe like the end of January that I did that. So it worked out pretty well to be able to do it.
Yeah.
And now I know I have faith that in times like this, that entertainment is so important. And if you look at every time, look at the Depression. There'll always be booze and entertainment.
That's true.
Those are the things that'll always be around.
Yeah, I was talking with David Williamson. The recent show I had gone to was to see The Illusionist, and that was the last large show, I guess. It must have been well over 1,000 people in attendance there.
Okay.
And when I was talking with David, that it's owned by the Cirque du Soleil organization then now, and that like with many Cirque shows, they'll have like somebody who will kind of walk around like pre-show as people are being seated to kind of have some fun. Well, David was the guy doing card tricks and walking around and whatnot.
Oh, how cool.
And,
I would have freaked had I been in that audience.
It would be fun. It was fun just to watch him. But the interesting thing is I was talking with him. First of all, he didn't want to shake hands, just kind of elbow bumped. And but he was saying that what he does is he doesn't have people pick cards. It's kind of like he will just riffle the cards. Kind of spring the cards, I should say. And in some place you say stop as I'm springing the card, and you select the card that way, as opposed to, having them select a card. You can still force a card with a dribble force. Anyhow, he does it that way. And I'm assuming that he probably doesn't have anybody sign the cards either. He probably just takes a pen himself, say, what's your name? It's JJ, so I'm just going to put that on the card. And so that way that, you don't have to put the pen in someone's hand and then to another person, because as you can imagine, audience after audience, for night after night, just back-to-back shows where you're working with thousands of people, that, he's trying to limit his exposure of tactile exposure, I should say. So that's just another thing, to kind of think about how that you can and should perhaps, change some things around, maybe not doing sponge rabbits or something, or sponge bunnies and sponge balls or whatever, putting things in people's hands, or even coins, because people might be thinking, who was holding this coin the last time, that you did this trick,
Even on the ships, like even the straitjacket escape. Yeah. So I always have a volunteer put me in that, obviously, but for that version of the show, I worked with a tech. I had one tech for those shows backstage. So the volunteer would come and spectate it to make sure it was fair. And we'd make sure they had a mic on a stand so I could talk with them throughout it. But the tech was the one that ultimately put me in it and did all the straps and stuff. Mm-hmm. That way, like, we're not touching each other at all as far as me and the volunteer, but they're commentating and they're there and they're looking at it, and we have funny banter back and forth. So that helped a lot.
Yeah. Well, as we start to wrap up over here, you've kind of already touched on this, but what do you plan to do during this hiatus, however long it may be, weeks or months?
Oh man. So, I am working on some new routines that they've been in the works for a little while now, but I honestly didn't have enough time to dedicate to them. So I'm super excited to work on that. And, I'm also making changes to, the Nations of the World routine that I did with you at IBM, my Animaniacs routine that I've loved doing for years. It's so much fun. I have figured out a kicker with that I'm super excited to incorporate. That'll be fun. And there's also there's an old circus act that I'm working on right now that I'm incorporating in a show. So I'm practicing that to work it in with the magic, but it takes some work. So we will see what happens. Yeah. I have enough time right now, though. Hopefully not too much time. I truly do have faith that this is going to turn around, because people do need entertainment and they do need an escape from reality.
Yep.
And I just have faith in my heart that this will blow over soon.
Sooner than later, let's hope. Yeah, that hopefully we come to a spring, and maybe that this might just be something that the virus will, get hot like a lot of other viruses and flus have in the past, and once spring and summer come, it just kind of dies out due to the heat. But who knows? We'll see. Well, listen, Jessica, thank you very much. I appreciate that, and wish you luck, and I appreciate you being on here and giving us your perspective of what's going on then, too.
Thank you, man. I'm sending everybody hugs, metaphysical hugs.
There you go. That's Jessica Jane Peterson, and for the Magic Word Podcast, Scotty out. So next up, I happened to be looking at some cancellations of some conventions, one of which was going to be the Obi's 4F convention. And I was looking on our Facebook page and reading about the cancellations of that. And one of the people who goes to the 4F each year is my friend David Corsaro. And as I was reading through his post on Facebook, I thought he had some really good ideas and suggestions on what to do during this downtime. So please welcome my guest right now, Mr. David Corsaro. Well, right now I've got a good friend of mine who is another Vector finger-flicking frolic friend, I guess a 5F'er, who you may have heard before actually on the podcast, Mr. David Corsaro. Hey there, David.
Hey, Scott. How's it going?
Fantastic with me, except for just kind of this cough I've got and fever. No, but anyhow, some of you who have been longtime listeners of the podcast might recall some years ago that I sat down both with David, and we also had then Rick Merrill and Steve Bragazzi, and we were talking about comedy and writing comedy and that kind of a thing. And I thought it was a really good episode, and you had a lot of good advice to contribute at that point then too, Dave. And so I appreciate that. I recommend that people go back and listen to that episode. But I wanted to touch base with you and reach out here today just because we are talking about COVID-19 and how that's kind of impacted, not kind of, it has impacted our shows as far as cancellations, postponements, and everything. And here we are sitting on March the 14th as I'm recording this with you, being on a Saturday. And so tell me, what's happened over this past week with you as far as your shows?
Yeah, I think I've been sort of in the same boat that a lot of my magician friends have been in, where all, if not most, if not all of our shows have been canceled. I know I had about 10 or so shows for the rest of March cancel on me, as well as a bunch of shows in the first few weeks of April.
That is pretty significant. In times like that, then how did you deal with those which were cancellations? Did you ask them if they would just consider a postponement?
Yeah, I mean, in most cases, there were situations where I could sort of talk to them about if they were going to postpone the event to later on. There were a few instances, for example, St. Patrick's Day type parades, where the calendar obviously prevents that from being postponed. It was just straight canceled. But in every single case that I spoke to somebody, I was able to sort of at least bring up the idea of if they were able to postpone the event, and obviously trying to make sure I'm available on the day if they have that is an option.
Right. And in cases like that where that they did have to be canceled in that case, obviously if they're postponed, you can say that I can push our deposit forward and apply that towards a future date. But where they're going to be actually canceled, then what is your policy towards dealing with that during these times?
Well, in these times, I sort of try to think of it in a much more longer-term basis. So, yes, even though that my contract does state that if any show is canceled within 7 days, I get X amount of percentage of the overall fee. Mm-hmm. In every situation, I basically said to people, look, this is a national emergency. It's all hands on deck. We obviously need to be able to make sacrifices across the board. Yes, I'm completely within my legal right to tell them that I'm keeping their deposit no matter what. But I think in a situation like that, you're creating much more ill will towards the client themselves. They're definitely not going to use you in the future. So I think if your budget sort of allows you to have that element of compassion and exercise that sort of freedom, just saying to somebody, look, normally I keep 50% of deposit. Obviously, this is a really unique situation. I'll refund it. I'll send it back to you. I'll keep it for a future thing. I'll do whatever it is you need me to do. And I think that creates so much compassion from the side of your clients that you're immediately going to be that first person they're going to call, hopefully for many, many, many shows in the future. And to me, that's worth it versus the ill will that you're going to generate by just keeping that 50% deposit now.
Absolutely. I guess that's the difference really between having a business relationship and a friendship with that, because that's what you're trying to do, I think, is really establish a friendship so that way they'll call David Corsaro. They wouldn't be calling the generic magician because, hey, that guy is fun to work with. Not only is he a good magician, but he's a good businessman, and he's helped me in the past, and I want to help him because friends like to help friends. So it's not just a business relationship. You develop a friendly business relationship.
Yeah, and you got to remember something. If odds are in that event they had other vendors that they were in contact with, food, DJ, all these other pieces, and many of them aren't able to give back a deposit.
Good point.
Like, for example, the caterer or anything like that. So the fact that you're one of the ones who is able to do that means you're going to be that first phone call next time.
That's a good point. Now, if you were going to be having something that was going to continue, let's say, but at a reduced number, let's say that there were going to be 300 people, but they said, hey, that we're still going to have it, but only 50 or 60 people are going to show up. What would you do differently as far as how you would handle the audience, your volunteers, if you were doing close-up or stage? How would you interact with your volunteers?
Well, the first thing I think that everybody has to consider is whether or not you should still agree to do the show. Yes, obviously, we all have to make money. We all have to survive. We all have to have an income. But don't forget something. If you're the magician who goes in there and, God forbid, you end up contracting this virus, and now everybody at that party thinks that they potentially got it from the magician, you're going to have much, much bigger problems down the road. So if there is any, in my opinion, at least for the next 2 weeks, if there's any conceivable way that you can say to them no, that you're not comfortable doing it for whatever reason, I think it's worth much more to you than the paycheck you're going to get from doing that one show and the disaster that could come down the road. The risk and reward are far too great.
Well, you got a good point there, and who knows what's going to be happening. Literally, this is a thing day to day. This podcast will be going out then later here in March on Thursday, on the 19th, and by that time there could be more things shut down, or we may know more or less, or it could be more fever or more worry about this. But certainly I agree that kind of in the next few weeks that we should be on the lookout, I guess, for how we're feeling and how we should interact with people, and whether we should try to quarantine ourselves and staying home as opposed to accepting those kinds of shows. And during that time, that brings me to one of my final points and questions I wanted to ask you is, what would you recommend that we do during this downtime?
So it's really interesting. So I think, I wrote 36 columns for MUM Magazine about how magicians can better market themselves. And at the bottom of every one of those columns, I included my email address, and I said, please reach out to me. Let me know if anybody has any questions regarding how to better market themselves. And the people who did reach out to me, the things that I heard a lot of were things like, I don't have time to think about my marketing, or all the marketing I think about is very short term. I have to worry about how to get that next show rather than think about the marketing that I'm going to be doing down the road, longer term. And we don't have that right now. There's not many people out there that are looking to hire somebody in the next 2 weeks. So this is your opportunity to do that. This is your opportunity to take a second and to start, in my opinion, collecting the data, gathering the materials, not advertising, because advertising is not going to really help you. Nobody who's booking a show in October is thinking this week, who am I going to hire to entertain my guests? So right now, advertising is not the right move, but this is the time to start gathering the information you need to be able to better market yourself. And I gave a lot of tips and suggestions in the course of those columns that I wrote. The one thing that I sort of stress is you really have to keep your eyes out. There's a lot of people out there who are offering courses that you could sign up for to help market yourself as a magician. And there are some that are really great, and there are some that are not. There are some that are out there who are trying to offer, I can help you double your business in the next 2 months and stuff like that. Listen, the reality is that if you see somebody making a real grandiose claim like that, they're not going to be able to back that up. In order to be able to effectively market ourselves as a magician, you have to be able to truly understand who your market is, who your target is, and the kind of work you do as a magician. So to me, the number one thing that everybody who's listening to this podcast can do right now is start collecting data. Start collecting data on the past and on the future. So here's what I mean by that. Start collecting data on the past. Go through all the shows that you've done in the last 2 years and try to collect all that information. Who did you do the show for? Where was the event? How much did you charge? How many guests did they have? Where was it? All as much as information as you can, gather that stuff together. Get a real true understanding of who your primary targets were, what venues you performed the most at, all of that information. Get all of that down. One of the things that I have is I have a venue worksheet that I fill out. So every time I perform at a new venue, I have a worksheet that I fill out after the event. It's got the name, the address, directions, how to get there, the telephone number, name of a number of different possible events happening simultaneously, name of the event coordinator, parking situation, number of bathrooms. Literally, I fill out as much information as I can so that in the future, if a client calls me and says, hey, Dave, we're having a show at the Manor. We would love to have you there. I can pull up that worksheet and immediately say, the Manor. I performed there 9 times in the past year. Have you talked to Steve, the event coordinator? He's a great guy. So now my client doesn't just look at me as the magician, but looks at me as somebody who has an area of expertise in the place where they are having arguably one of the most important events of their life, whether it's a wedding, bar mitzvah, corporate event, no matter what it may be. So to me, this is a great opportunity for magicians to make sure they have all of that information accessible at their fingertips, so that when you get that phone call in the future, you're more ready, prepared to do it. That is the past. Now there's also opportunity to fill out stuff and get information for the future. And what I mean by that is get a really robust spreadsheet going about all the country clubs in your area, all the service organizations that have Christmas parties, all the theaters, all the event coordinators, all the different talent agencies. Just get all that data together so that if you do in the future do a newsletter, or if you have an email blast, or you want to do more targeted social media advertising, now you have that complete, robust list together that you need so you know who you're targeting.
Well, that's a good idea. And that would just be a regular Excel spreadsheet or something, I guess, that you can easily put together.
It's whatever you're comfortable with.
Yeah,
I have people who are not as comfortable with online tools, so literally go ahead and just make out pieces of paper with all that stuff and make a file so that you can quickly access it. If you are a little more online tool friendly, create a Google spreadsheet, create a Google Doc, put reminders in your calendars of when you want to reach out to it. Is there a country club in your area that always has an annual golf outing? A lot of times you can find that online where they're advertising their golf outing. Perfect. Put that in your Google Calendar so that 2.5 months before that golf outing, you can reach out to that country club and see how they're doing for entertainment.
Wow, great idea. Well, and ideas, I should say plural. And before we close, if they want to contact you, what is your email address?
Sure. So anybody can email me, timetobeawesome@gmail.com. You can go to timetobeawesome.com, which takes you to my website, which, just like Scott Wells and his fantastic podcast, I have a few free online interviews I've done with different people, and you can check out some stuff there. But again, email me, timetobeawesome@gmail.com. And if you need to have more in-depth personal discussions about what it's going to take to help better effectively market yourself, let's do it. Let's all be more successful together.
That sounds great. Boy, that's a good attitude and good suggestions. And thank you so very much for your time and all those ideas.
It's my pleasure, Scott. Thank you.
So for the Magic Word Podcast, that was David Corsaro. This is Scotty out. Well, we've been talking with some performers who work in the corporate market or work for family audiences, but I thought it's important also that we get a perspective from someone who actually works with children a lot, with entertaining for the birthday parties and large groups of children, perhaps school shows, things like that. And because I know a lot of people who are listening to this, that's one of your core markets also. So I thought it'd be kind of interesting to see about how that you should be interacting with children and perhaps changing your tricks and ways of handling the audience on stage, etc. So here we get to listen to some suggestions and a perspective from my friend Jamie Salinas, who also is the host of a YouTube channel, which I highly recommend, called The Art of Magic. If you are not listening to that or watching that, he's got several episodes out right now. It's just a short, about 10 or 12-minute thing. Anyhow, go check that out over on YouTube. But first, let's hear what he has to say. Please welcome Jamie Salinas. So right now I am with my friend Jamie Salinas, who many of you have heard here on the podcast from time to time. I think he's probably been my most frequent visitor next to Banachek down over the years. And he has someone who works frequently throughout not only the Houston area, but different places around the United States. He is done several speaking engagements, but most popularly as a children's entertainer here in Houston. He's a tremendous corporate entertainer, but he is also does a lot of birthday parties. And I was just kind of concerned and wondering how birthday parties are going. But first, hello there, Jamie. How you doing?
Oh, great. I'm doing actually really good.
you don't have any fever. You feel fine. You're good, so we can talk. Okay.
No fever. I do feel a little tickle in my throat, but I think it's because the beer I just had. Maybe that's it.
There you go. So my question just is, have you noticed that you've had some shows that have been canceled or postponed?
Well, the very first show I did at the very beginning of all this, I'm going to call it situation, because it depends. Some people are saying it's the sky's falling, and some people are saying it's not. And whether if it is or is not, it really is. So I was performing at the Children's Museum here in Houston. I did a show for about, I'd say about 200 or 300 people, parents and children. And this was at the very beginning of the scare, or the concerns and everything. So I didn't see anything immediately happen as far as like a drop in attendance. But what I did was I purposely put a bottle of hand sanitizer on my table. And so as my introduction is being played, music comes on, I walk on, I greet everyone, and I just put a squirt in my hand, wipe my hands in front of everyone, didn't call attention to it, and just continued on with the show.
Now, is that something that you would also do at a birthday party?
Well, see, that was the last show that I have performed.
Okay.
All the other shows I had scheduled have been canceled. And of course, it's children, families getting together, large groups. Right now, in the most couple of weeks here, I have a wedding that's on Friday. That's this coming Friday. And it's going to happen in my hometown, which is Baytown, a suburb of Houston. I've heard that the mayor has already said that all events with large groups of people have been canceled. So I'm still not sure about this wedding that's going to happen on Friday. And then on Sunday, I'm scheduled to be back at the Children's Museum. And they have called me and said, we're still on. Are you still available?
And how many kids actually show up for that?
The museum will have about 400 or 500 people there at any given moment, and a couple of hundred will be in the, in the auditorium watching my show. So I honestly think this is going to be canceled, but I'm ready to go if needed.
Now, when you say you're ready to go, are you planning anything different as far as how you will handle children, as far as touching them, or do you do any high fives, or when you bring them on stage, or have them hold anything, or what? How would you alter your show, if at all?
Well, a lot of my performances, the family type shows, are living rooms, small parties of 50, 60 people, and I don't typically use a microphone. But at the Children's Museum, I used a microphone in this case, and I'm trying to work on or hone my mic stand microphone skills. And so I've been doing a lot of those shows with a microphone on the mic stand, and I didn't think about this till after the show. Kids really love when I invite them up, hey, what's your name? I hold the mic up to their mouth. They say their name. They love hearing their voice being amplified. And I didn't think about it till afterwards. I stuck that microphone in front of all those children in their front of their mouths. So they all breathed into that microphone, and I was too. So that right there immediately is going to have to be out of the show if it does happen.
Right. But as far as handing them things or something, and I know in your close-up walk-around when you do corporate cocktail parties and things, have you thought about changing that as opposed to having people pick a card, any card, and take one out, or that you're going to be saying, here, sign a card, and you hand them a pen, or that you do sponge rabbits or something like that? Any of that changed?
Well, I honestly have not done any corporate events since this whole situation, but I believe that when those kick back in, and those are the ones that actually canceled, I had several strolling jobs coming up, and all the way up until the mid-April, and then those have canceled. They basically have said they're going to reschedule them, so I don't know when the new dates are going to be at this point.
So it's actually being postponed rather than canceling. But those who actually have canceled because they can't reschedule for whatever reason, how have you handled that as far as your deposits?
Well, on my family shows, the smaller in town, I do not require a deposit. Now, on my corporate jobs, I do require a deposit. The couple of events that were canceled did have deposits. And so because they are going to be rescheduled, I'm just applying it to their event at a later date. So it's basically the deposit is still good, but it's for a later date to be determined.
Mm-hmm.
Now the children's shows, I'm pretty much just out of that money because I don't charge a deposit on those.
Mm-hmm.
No, now it depends on the time of year. Obviously, December is a very busy time for a lot of magicians, so that's the point where I do require deposits for family type shows.
But if you were going to be having something canceled that they were not postponing, what would be your policy?
I've had a few cancellations before. If you're in the business for a long time, that's going to happen. Yeah, that's right. So what I typically do is my contracts do state deposit is non-refundable for events canceled. Let's say I'm performing an outdoor event and it could rain, it could be bad inclement weather. And so that's what that policy is in place. So I'm reserving that date and time for them. And a few occasions I have had cancellations and I have kept the deposit. Most of the time these events are rescheduled and I just apply the deposit to the future date. And then if I've never returned any money, but people have typically booked me for future events and I just applied the deposit for their upcoming event.
Yeah, you told me just recently that you had something that was booked through an agent then also, and you were going to get back with them because they don't pay you a deposit. You want to talk about that for just a sec?
Right, and that's still actually outstanding. An agent had contacted me for an event in April. I signed a contract with the agent, and it basically says that I'm going to be there date and time for a couple hours of walk around at my fee, and that event has canceled. The agent sent me an email saying, hey, that event is canceled. What do you want to do about payment because you signed a contract and we want to honor that. And my first thought is I don't want to collect a full amount of money from an agent that I do regular work for if I'm not doing anything. Now, if that agent has collected a deposit from the actual customer, then I think it's only fair that I do receive a percentage of that.
Pay them back their 20%.
Right, the 80-20 kind of rule, sure.
Right.
And so I have not heard back from the agent at this point, so I don't know what the case is as far as them receiving payment or not for a deposit.
All right. Well, to kind of wrap up over here, let's talk about what you're going to be doing during your downtime. Now, I do want to help promote also the Art of Magic, which is your YouTube channel, and I highly recommend that people subscribe to and go check that out because you have irregular podcasts, but I would say vlogs, I guess, that you post that are about 10 minutes or so in duration that give some information, some really good information, and some interviews with some people from time to time also that has to do with magic and marketing and theory and performing and different kinds of things. So I recommend people go to the Art of Magic and check out Jamie Salinas' YouTube channel there as well. And you had just recently talked about what you were going to be doing. Can you kind of recap that? And have you thought about some other things that you might want to do during this off time?
Sure, absolutely. The latest episode, which is I'm up to number 30 now. I did talk about the virus. What do you do? All these shows are canceling. You're at home. Now, the number one thing financially is most of us should be stockpiling or setting some money aside, the rainy day kind of thing. And you never know, these type of events come up. I do realize there's going to be some entertainers out there who are living week to week and month to month on these type of events, and they're the ones who are going to be really severely impacted by the loss of income coming in. So I had some different ideas. One is, why not sell off a lot of your old magic that you're no longer using, magic that's just sitting on the shelf, kind of thin the herd, so to speak. And that's what I'm doing myself. I've got a couple items that I have listed right now, and it's not necessarily to keep me afloat financially, but it is to keep me busy and get rid of the things that I'm no longer using. Now is a really good time to practice a new routine that you wanted to add to your show. Evaluate your performances. Take a look at the music you're using in your show. Can I upgrade it? I have some music in my show that I've been using for over 10 years. So I think it's
me too.
I think it's time that we update our music and update our performances. This is a good time to do that. And lastly, I have not done my taxes yet. So that's what I'll be working on as well.
Good advice. Well, great. Well, Jamie, thank you very much. I appreciate this, and I know we'll all get through this hopefully sooner than later, and there'll be a bright day at the end of this darker night. So thanks for your suggestions.
Oh, I definitely think there will be. And one last suggestion for everyone. We're all on social media. We're not doing anything. We're kind of bored. I would suggest you keep your posts kind of generic, because it's kind of like politics. Some people say, hey, this is all a big hoax and it's a big, the media is hyping things up. And then there's another side of it saying, no, this is a real deal. So no matter what you believe or what side of the fence you're on, I think you should probably stay safe with what you're posting about the situation as a performer, and kind of keep it generic. That way you're not, you're not alienating potential
one sector
clients.
or another. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Same thing like with politics. Exactly right. I hadn't thought about it that way. That's good advice as well. Well, Jamie, thank you very much.
All right. Stay safe.
So for the Magic Word Podcast, that was Jamie Salinas and The Art of Magic on YouTube. This is Scotty out. Another segment of our industry that has been hurt are the people who are working conventions. That is, those who are trade show workers, and also people who lecture. And if you go to the website at themagicwordpodcast.com, of course, we have a Magic Convention Guide, and people check that regularly to kind of see what's coming up. And also, I have updated that as I am being made aware of different conventions and events that are being canceled or postponed. You can also go to their website. There are links there as well so that you can get more details about that. But some of you might be wondering whether some things are canceled or not. It's always a good place to go and check. But beyond that, as I mentioned about lecturers, I was coordinating the lecture trip for Ilan Iannone coming over from Italy, and he was supposed to be coming over on March 29th, and then going to be staying through until the 4F convention coming up in late April, and then lecturing along the way, but that has all been canceled. Likewise, Ferran Rizzo and Natalie Machado from Spain, who are teachers at the Juan Tamariz Magic School, were going to be coming later, and that lecture tour has now been canceled as well. As I said, there are conventions and events and trade shows that have been canceled, and one such was an event that was by a friend of mine, Luve Melander, who had come over from Sweden, and he got over here a little bit early before, and kind of got under the wire, if you will, before they started stopping the flow of anybody traveling in or out of other countries. And by the time he got here, then they had canceled his event where he was going to be performing. So he was going to be going to Austin to lecture up there for some friends. And I'm not sure how that went, because once again, it was going to be for a fairly small group. But again, small groups have been banned. But I say banned, I mean they're actually making us take a second look at that. Now, this has been all relatively quick also. This just happened on Monday, March the 16th, whenever that he was in town. On the 15th, he stayed overnight with me here at the house, and so we're going to be having a podcast episode with him coming up here soon. But Luve is someone, again, who works trade shows around the world, and in fact that he had one time a conflict, and so he had booked me actually to fill in for him at the Offshore Technology Conference here in Houston, which that conference has now been canceled or postponed then as well. So a lot of big events have been canceled. So right now I'm going to let you hear a little bit from him to kind of hear about what's going on with him from a perspective of someone who is from overseas. So please welcome Luve Melander. So now I thought I would get kind of an international perspective as it happens. I have with me Luve Melander from Sweden. Hello, Luve.
Hello there, Scott.
And so I wanted to ask you about how this coronavirus and pandemic has affected you in Sweden. Now, you're here in the U.S. and right now kind of stranded in a way, but so tell us what happened or what's your situation?
Well, being stranded here, I can read what a colleague says and say all the work is cancelled. So now starts the work with, if you have a contract, to get at least 75% of the money back and the things. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, in my case, 98% I don't have a contract.
Really?
Yes, but during my 36 years as a professional, I actually always get paid if they cancelled. Mm-hmm. So, because if you have a big company, they are like...
But you have a deposit?
No.
No, okay.
No.
Okay. But they still pay you if it's canceled.
Oh, yes.
But as far as what's been happening then right now, are you seeing more cancellations? Or, I mean, this just started a couple weeks ago.
Some people ask me, aren't you stressed? Today, when you're standing here in your beautiful magic house, I don't know if I can go back to Sweden. Mm-hmm. And if I had booked shows, I would be stressed. But all my shows are canceled.
Back home?
Yes, back home. So I'm not super stressed about that.
So did they notify you before you came over or while you were here?
No, I was here.
You've been getting emails saying, sorry, we're going to cancel.
Sorry.
Wow.
And the show that was canceled that I would have today here in Houston, they pay me for that one. And they say it will be again in June. But,
right.
I'm not sure.
Right, when it's going to turn around. Well, when you flew over to begin with, obviously there was no problem traveling, but trying to get back then now, I know this morning you'd gotten the notice from the airline saying it's being delayed or what?
Yeah, well, it said like we changed everything.
Okay.
I had to read more carefully. But this shows how vulnerable we are. Mm-hmm. And when you have good month, good year, save money in funds. Mm-hmm. It always will come a rainy day.
That's true. Rainy days are coming.
And now it's like really raining. Mm-hmm. So luckily enough, when I had the really juicy, great years, I have them in funds, savings. So I can last for like 3 years with not one show.
Okay.
And that's very important for me to be a calm, cool person that are not stressed.
Yeah. And during this time right now, when there are shows canceled, what are you going to be spending your time doing?
With my best 52 friends and their 2 pals called the Joker. Practicing. I have some colleagues at home that are being pros as long as me, and they are impressed of how much I practice. Mm-hmm. But one of the beauty with this art form we are doing is that you will never be fully taught. You have
True.
You
always practice and always trying to get that next level.
And when you stop being curious, learning new stuff, boom, 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 going down.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now's a good time to practice.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
So my tip for all of you, every time when I watch a movie, is in a big meeting where they don't see what I do with my hands. Mm-hmm. I'm doing Emsley count, Hammond count, Pinker count, everything over and over again. So normally it's like 2-3 hours a day I do something. Mm-hmm. If I walk on the street, I palm a coin. I do something because otherwise it's a waste of time. And
I've told people to do that as well. Walk around with the palm coins. This way, when you're pushing elevator buttons or even shaking hands, that you are used to that.
Absolutely. It's like Emsley count. For 3 months, I did the Emsley count 1,000 times a day. For 34 years, I did it in my right hand. And as we spoke yesterday, I showed you a trick and realized I moved the cards within left and right hand. I thought,
right.
So I reversed it. It took me 2 years to make it good with left hand. 2 years. Like 2 hours a day. So it takes time, but it pays.
Yeah. And now we have time to practice that.
Oh, yes.
Good advice. Well, good luck, and let's hope things turn around soon.
Yes. And Scott, I'm so amazed how you bring me in here. We never met before, and you bring me on this fantastic magic house here. And those martinis will follow me for years. It's the best I ever had.
Why, thank you.
So you are a great man, and you do so much for the magic community, because all the one that can't travel all over, being in the conventions, and you're there, and listen to you in the car when I'm flying, it's like you're there with you. So that is just a big wow.
Well, you are welcome. And thank you for listening. And you're just an example of one of the many international listeners that we have for the Magic Word. And I'm always pleased to meet someone personally, although we've talked and you had booked me for a trade show some years ago, as well. So we've known each other, but this is the first time we physically met. I feel we've been friends forever, So it's great to spend time with you too.
And I'm looking forward to see you in perhaps next year or in
Quebec.
30 years, 40 years, you will see that you will look the same, The profession keeps us young.
Yeah, it's true. That's right. That's right. So with the Magic Word Podcast, that was Lou Melanda. Scotty out. All right, I thought it would be important that we also get a perspective of what's happening in the land of entertainment, that is in Las Vegas, Nevada. And, of course, I have a longtime friend and one of my boys and somebody who you've heard on the podcast frequently. Each year we get together to talk about what's happening in Vegas and also on the social media, what's been happening. And so please welcome my friend, Mr. Murray Sawchuk. Hey, Murray.
Hey, how you doing, buddy? How's life there in Texas?
Well, kind of the same as it is every place else. We're not on lockdown yet. The state hasn't been locked down. I've heard them rumored that be the case. I know that some other cities and different places are starting to run out of things as far as the stores. It looks like, something from The Walking Dead or something, in some of these places. It's kind of crazy. So that's why I was calling to find out what's going on in Las Vegas. And as far as your shows in the afternoon, have that been postponed, canceled, and what are the casinos like?
Yeah, it's unbelievable. It's a ghost town. Even at night now, the hotels don't have their lights on. So the lights you normally see in Vegas are not up. The shows are shut down. And here's what's interesting. They have closed all the casinos. It's a mandatory, it's a mandate from Sisolak, who's our governor. And that's what you do. You have no choice when it comes to government thing.
Right.
And so, Sunday was the last days of my show, and recently last month I've been doing 2 shows. I had a show at Tropicana, which I've always had, my own show, but I've also been just hired 6 days a week over at a show called Fantasy, which is at the Luxor, doing the comedy spot. It's a 15-minute spot in the show. It's been around for 20 years, the show. So I was doing both shows. And then also my girlfriend, Danny, she was the host of Crazy Girls. So all of our last shows were Sunday night. And so I did my show right across the street, did the Fantasy show, and we were waiting to hear what the word was. And then, of course, Monday morning, all of MGM properties basically were being shut down till the end of March. So May 1st, they're selling rooms again, and they were
April
the first
or May?
one.
Starting in April or May?
May 1st.
Okay.
No, May 1st. So April's done. But they were the first ones. Now, MGM isn't just MGM, the Green MGM Hotel in Vegas. For those who don't know, MGM owns a ton of hotels, like Caesars does. When you say Caesars, it's not just Caesars, So MGM owns the Luxor, owns Excalibur, owns New York. It's a big monopoly in Vegas.
Right.
And so they shut all their hotels and they locked their doors. Well, here's what's great, which I don't know if many people know this or not, but you can't lock a hotel door. If you ever go into any hotel in Vegas, or maybe even big hotels in your city, there's no lock on the door because they're open 24 hours. It's a casino. So it's very funny. So what they've had to do is take these chains that are wrapped in rubber so they don't, hurt the glass or the nice metal handles, and they've actually physically have to get chain and a lock and actually chain the doors together because the doors don't have a lock in them. So it's very funny. It's a little unique.
Well, I really hadn't thought about that. Obviously, that they are open 24/7, and they're encouraging people to come in and out. And now having to actually physically lock the door. So again, the governor has pretty much said that they just don't want people to congregate for any purpose, whether it's going to be for shows, whether it's concerts, or obviously even coming in and the gaming table. So they're losing millions of dollars a day.
Oh, unbelievable amount of money. It's unbelievable. And don't forget all the convention work. I did my corporate show last week. And it was a really big corporate show right when all this stuff started to hit. And a bunch of entertainers, there's like 15 of us on stage, and quite a few of us that are known in town to open this big, it was a cater source, I believe it was called, for catering for, events across the world.
Yeah.
And there were about 3,500 people in that room, and there was only 1,500. And that was just when this was starting to break, and people were starting to get worried. We did it, of course, because, everything was still rolling.
Right.
And literally within that 24 hours, hotels, entertainers, destination management companies lost thousands and millions of dollars instantly. The whole year was canceled. So a big difference in the game.
Well, now, again, this is not just you, but this is kind of all up and down the strip and downtown then as well. So all the other shows and things are canceled. I mean, Mike Hammer and everybody else that's working.
Everybody's canceled. Penn and Teller were one of the first ones to shut down, before Caesars did their shutdown. And then finally David Copperfield was going on like we were. And then I think his last show was like on a Sunday or something. And so, once again, it goes into the fact that I think MGM knew it way ahead of the game because they decided we're not selling tickets until May 1st because they realize it's going to take, a few minutes to get this thing to the peak of infection and then drop off. And the only reason I'm saying that because I don't know exactly what I'm talking about, but I do know what Korea did. And the Korea had it a while ago, and we're kind of using Korea and Italy as our extremes. Korea got it and they shut it down real quick, and they figured out what to do. And then Italy was a little more lax, as we know. And so I think the States all of a sudden went, hold on, we see the extremes of this. Let's do this now. And I know people are freaking out. I know people are losing money left, right, and center and all this. And, this reminds me of 2 or 3 things in my life personally. It reminds me of 9/11. I was actually doing a magic convention up in the Catskills that weekend when the whole world fell and those trade centers went down. Planes grounded, but I actually hopped in my car and drove up there. And it was Jack and Mary were up there as well, and we still had the convention up there. But I had to drive to keep doing it. But people lost work like crazy for that as well, because it's a ripple effect, and same with the crash of 2009, when all the housing markets went, everything went to crap. Everything went, at least in Vegas it did. So,
well, even right now, that's a very good point, then, Murray, in which that we're seeing the stock market today as we're speaking here on Wednesday the 18th, that it's below 20,000 points, the Dow Jones. And so that's dropped like a third, over the last few weeks. And my point is that it'll be a while, I would think, that would come back up, even whenever that we get through this, and I'm confident that we will, as far as the coronavirus and finding a cure and whatever will happen, we'll move on through. But for the rest of the market to come back up and people feel comfortable to coming back and spending money for shows, for entertainment, and other discretionary expenditures, if you will, like gambling or whatever, I would think that would be kind of slow to come back. I don't think it'll rebound immediately. Just my thought.
Well, I think it's going to take a few minutes for it to come back as well. But, it's funny, as humans, we're so resilient, and we really are. You know what I mean? Like, even our bodies to our minds, we get a scrape on our hand, and then like 2 weeks later, it heals. It's unbelievable. Right. We don't know what's going on, but it heals, and we heal. And I'm not, trying to be, this great word of this is what's going to happen, but we really have this sense of we get sad, we get upset, and then all of a sudden we get on with it. And I've shared this with so many people. So, whether we come back to work in May or April or whatever the case is, that's why we're doing this now. That's why it's so extreme now. And I think it shocked a lot of people because they're like, oh my God, we'll never work again. We've been through this. I was talking to Marv Roy, Mr. Electric, and as most people know or who know me in the business, he's my mentor and dear friend. And he's 94, and he's in a great activity home, retirement home, and they've locked the doors there in Palm Springs because they don't, those people over 75 or 65 are most infected by this. But he's like, yeah, they've locked us in our rooms and we can't go to the dining room now and we're in jail. And it's so funny. It's cute. But you know what, Murr? I fought on the beaches of Normandy, in World War II, and I have shrapnel in my head. So you know what? We'll get through this. And it really
got to put it in perspective, huh?
Yeah. I was on the beaches of Normandy. I mean, we read about that in our high schools, and I don't know many people that know people that actually fought in that war. It was a very, very famous war for those who know history.
Well, let me ask you also then, right now, as I start to wrap up, what are you doing then, or what recommendations would you have as far as how we can best spend our time during this downtime?
Well, my suggestion is 2 things. First of all, I'm a huge believer in this. I've always lived this way in my life because I've had good, bad, and different things happen in my life. It's not what happens to you. You have no control over that. It's how you deal with it. You have that power,
right?
How you react to this situation. And that's a fact. I believe in it. And so what we're doing, and I'm lucky because I've been doing it, for 4 or 5 years now, is I'm going to start doing YouTube videos almost daily. Every day I'm uploading a YouTube video of things to do at home, doing tricks like I normally do. We usually do 1 or 2 uploads a week. Yeah. Now I'm going to start doing it. Starting Friday or Saturday, doing a YouTube video a day, uploading things you can do with your kids at home, activities like Danny. She's my girlfriend, for some of you who know, is a showgirl in Vegas, and she has to stay in shape because when she goes back to work in 4 or 6 weeks, she still wants to look like, a dancer, not,
exactly.
Like, right? So basically,
like she didn't want to look like she's eating pancakes 3 times a day.
Exactly. So she's like, but all of our gyms are closed. She goes to the gym 4 times a week at least.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, so, gyms, yeah.
And so do I, but I go just because I want to stay in shape and keep up with her, but she has to go because it's her job. And so now what we're doing is every morning now, we're doing a 35-minute work at home with stuff around the house. We're going to, I have bricks from outside that I use to build stuff, so we're going to lift a brick. I have these big ball peen hammers. We're going to start swinging those around, jogging on the spot, doing push-ups, doing sit-ups. We have 3 chihuahuas. I'm going to start, doing chihuahua curls, whatever it is. We're going to start doing that. And we're very resourceful. Just be a survivor, and really don't depend on other people, depend on yourself. And this is a great time for magicians to start learning the tricks. I know every magician out there listening right now has 10 books and 10 DVDs they've never even opened because they're just lazy or they don't want to learn the method that hard or it's too hard for them. Well, guess what? There's no excuses now. Open the book. And they're free because you already bought them 10 years ago at a convention. So use them, look at it. And at the end of this, my goal, and I challenge everybody out there who's listening, come up with 5 tricks you've never done in your life. I don't care. That would be original. You have to invent the wheel. 5 tricks you've always wanted to learn or do. And by May 1st, do those 5 tricks online in your show, in your kid's show, whatever the case is. And make that a challenge to yourself. It's only 6 weeks. Improve yourself. And even though bookings are going to be lower, if you charge $500 a booking, give people a break. $250, $225. I'm not saying drop the market, but everyone needs to save money. Give them a deal. You know what I mean? Don't gouge the market. And if you do this, you will continue to work. I've done this all my life. I've gone through things where I've lost work for long periods of time because I've come back from somewhere and agents forgot about me and stuff. Well, you work the market. And if you're sitting at home on your couch right now not making anything, if you go outside the door and you can make $1, that's $1 more that you're going to make than sitting on your ass on the couch once everything opens up again. So,
well, that's true. Another thing is, as far as I'm sure that they're going to be needing some drivers for Amazon. You would imagine that everybody's ordering things through Amazon. Maybe they might, kind of like during the holidays, they might need some additional drivers. I know it has nothing to do with entertainment or magic. Same thing with Uber Eats. Everybody's trying to get food delivered to home. Perhaps you can get a job with Uber Eats. I'm just saying if someone's sitting at home and they're trying to figure out how do I make my rent next month, that you're looking for some things, maybe a couple of things you can still do, get out of the house and make some money that way then too. But what you're saying, I like that idea. I was going to go further and say perhaps I love the idea of learning 5 things and putting that into your show. But then also I might say if you take one item out of your drawer that you got at a lecture or something sometime before, try to figure out 5 different routines for one trick. So in other words, don't stop thinking. You got to keep moving through and to think about what can I do with this? Okay, what else can I do with this? And to come up with 5 different ideas of how you might be able to perform that.
Yeah. Don't use this time as a negative. I know we're all upset because of the bills. We're all in the same boat.
We're all connected like that.
Yeah, we're all like this. We're all worried about money and family and people, and because if one person in the family has money, the other person is still trying to accumulate money. We're all there to help people, right? So my point is, when you're in this situation, use the next 2 to 6 weeks. Be upset, cry, get upset for an hour. We're all going to do that. Have a glass of wine or drink a juice or whatever you drink. But then put the balls on, and get out there and use this time to benefit. So when the sun rises again, which it will in 4, 6, 8 weeks or whatever the case is, that you're a better person, more talented, more educated, in better shape, whatever the case is, use this time. So at the end of it all, you come out a better person for whatever you want to do, better magic, better whatever the hell it is.
Yep. Good advice.
Yeah.
Murray, thank you very much. I appreciate your words of wisdom all the time. It's always good visiting with you. And all I can say is to stay safe out there and be well.
Yeah, you too, man. Thanks so much. Stay healthy, and we'll talk to you soon. I love you.
Love you too. Thanks again. And so that was Murray from Las Vegas. Scotty out. I want to thank all of my guests who were on the episode here this week, and certainly there could have been a lot more. This was kind of an extended episode and a little bit longer than usual, but I figured you might have a little bit more time to listen here then as well. Plus, the kinds of things we're talking about is relevant to all of us right now as we kind of go through all of this. And it is kind of important to feel that we are connected, and certainly we are. And I feel very fortunate and blessed to be able to share this with others as I have over the years. And getting the word out and getting to talk with other magicians, so this way that we do feel even more connected when you get to hear about what everyone else is doing then as well. And speaking of that a while back I had spoken with a friend of mine, Pat Hazel, who is a comedy magician. He was at Magic Live and been around magic for a very long time and a great guy. And anyhow, I noticed that he had said something on his Facebook page, which I asked if I could share and quote, and he said, of course. And so this is a quote from Pat Hazel's Facebook page in which he says, "I am stepping off the coronavirus punchline bus to remind my many talented friends that are artists, songwriters, playwrights, and musicians that while the shows and the gatherings may have been postponed, your voices are more valuable than ever. Write through it. Express yourself. Bring hope and vulnerability to the moment. Help others to embrace the solitude that is upon us. Look to nature for inspiration. Turn off the TV and turn on your creativity. Take advantage of the found time to move the world with a new piece of art. Stock up an arsenal of art rather than toilet paper. Share your songs on social media. Guide us to the light side with heart, humor, and humanity. Despite the responsible practice of social distancing, we can unite in another way. We can be united in hope and share the experience of the human condition, knowing we still rely deeply on each other to thrive. I am planting this idea farm for my friends who I know will make a bountiful harvest of putting pen to paper and voice to music to inspire and empower the rest of us. Again, that's Pat Hazel, and some good words to live by during this time. And again, if you want to hear more from Pat, actually I had a 2-part episode, so if you go back in the archives that you can listen to what we had to say. It was a wonderful podcast, so I certainly recommend. And now that you have some time, of course, another thing is to go back, you can go in the archives and listen to many of the or all of the podcasts that we have done, over 500 of them. So another thing, I mentioned that the conventions have been postponed or canceled. So if you're planning on attending one of those here coming up and you'd still like to attend one, well, you kind of can if you go back to the website here at themagicwordpodcast.com and look for some convention updates where I have been posting daily updates. You can go back and relive those situations or attend a convention maybe that you had attended and would like to have gone to again this year but are going to miss, or just to kind of remember the wonderful experience that we had in sharing conversations and fun and laughs and tricks with one another. So again, we're all very connected in this community, and I certainly do appreciate it. And by the way, speaking of connectivity, I spoke at the end at last week's podcast with Diamond Jim about my son getting some new stem cells, and the transplant went very well last week, and so he's still in the hospital in Dallas, but doing well. And there again, that if you are looking for something to do, you might go to bethematch.org, where that you can consider being a donor for stem cells. Certainly you could save a life, possibly. My son's life is being saved right now. So again, thank you guys for listening, and thank you for considering making a donation, and thank you for those who have reached out and have asked. So just, again, an update. He's doing well, and so his body is just learning to adapt to the new situation. Well, each week, whenever I close the podcast, I always say to stay well, get booked, and then close with whatever the magic word might be. And that is even more important this week than ever before, because I truly mean that. So stay well, get booked in the future. So if you're having something postponed, see if you can get booked for later, if you can't, for tomorrow. So stay well, get booked, and wash your hands. Be safe out there. This is Scotty out.